My name's Jordan Kleiman. How did I first get involved? Well, the first thing that came out of the gate actually was the garden, and it was a group of students, I guess in the summer of 2007. Oh, the students, none of whom I knew, I think, that I can remember, they were from all different majors, approached me, and the idea was to get people to think about the interconnections between or among environmental sustainability, social justice, and food. And the garden is one way to get people thinking about these things, but we also have a speaker series where we bring in outside speakers, activists or scholars in some cases, to talk about some of these bigger issues and link up what we're doing in the garden with, you know, the larger world. It wasn't sort of meant to be a garden club. Some people think of it like that, but it's not really about that. So there's a kind of a pretty strong political, I guess you'd say political in the broadest sense of the term, intention behind the whole thing.
A lot of students start out just by, like, I don't know, just trying something they haven't tried before, and then also planting something and coming back a few weeks later and seeing that it's grown. There's a really different relation to your food versus, you know, Wegmans.
So why do you guys do it?
But he's adorable.
I had radio training with
I don't know. I've always really liked gardening. You know, when we meet like Wednesday afternoons, it's like, I don't know, it's like such a release from like your normal day-to-day of like being at class, and then I don't know, it's just like such a different thing to like get outside and like be dirty. Like,
sure.
Like it's like I don't know, it's really like satisfying. But also like me and my roommates get a lot of our food from here. Like I haven't bought tomatoes all year, I haven't bought lettuce all year, I haven't bought spinach or greens, like, so it really is like a food source, like significant.
Yeah, it's definitely where I get the bulk majority of my produce. Majority of us don't know how to produce our own food, so this is also like a learning tool.
Actually, this isn't.
I've gained a sense of appreciation for my food, definitely.
Yeah.
I try to eat as local as possible. We're part of this community-supported market on campus, and so all of that food comes from no more than a 100-mile radius. Most of it even closer. Most of it right where we're standing.
What we've done is something called a community-supported market, where instead of linking up with one farmer, we link up with a farmer's market up in Rochester. So we have this community-supported market in which students buy shares, and then students go up and pick up the shares, which are packed in boxes at the market. And so there are probably 7 or 8 farmers who contribute to this, who sell at the farmer's market, and then they come. The students bring the stuff back here, and there's a distribution point, and then that's how it works.
And just an appreciation for really the hard work and the labor that it takes to produce food, and how we can help and make a difference in the world that way.
Right, and it's like teaches you like such like the disconnect between like what the experience of like buying groceries at Wegmans and like knowing like, all right, well that's factory farming and that's like produced in Venezuela or whatever, and versus like growing it yourself, and just like all the knowledge that comes with like kind of like understanding the cycle a little better. And I don't know, for me it's really changed the way I eat.
So this is just a way for me to keep on learning, keep the practice up, and keep on getting involved, and keep on finding out what I like about it. It's important to know where our food comes from. We eat food 3 times a day. We need it to live. And you know, submitting that to allowing giant supermarket chains to ship our food in from Mexico is not good for our country, it's not good for the environment, and it's not good for our eating habits or our spending habits. And then there's the whole drive about supporting local farmers, which makes more sense ecologically and economically, and not wanting to feed the big machine of corporate agriculture and give them your dollars instead of giving your dollars to people who deserve it, more on a communal level.
Well, sustainability is one, clearly. You know, how do you model a food system that is based on the power of the sun rather than fossil fuels. I mean, that's one of the big things. How do you do it without spewing poisons all over the place? And how do you do it without, transporting your food thousands of miles from field to plate, so it's localness is important, ecological practices, closing loops in the garden so that, your garden is sponsoring its own fertility, sponsoring its own pest control without chemical inputs. And those obviously link up to issues of resource depletion, in general, climate change, national security issues in terms of, if we have a food system that's drenched in oil, are we more likely to go, and fight for it in regions where the oil is? So all these kinds of things are, as soon as you sort of trace it out from the garden, it goes in all kinds of directions. And then as far as the social justice piece of it, this is me in particular, some of my research really deals with this and my interests politically. What kind of access do people have to, if you're gonna recommend that they eat organic and local food, what kind of access do they have to that? What kind of access do they have to any kind of food, really? And so, there's a good deal of research now and political organizing around the issue of food deserts. I don't know if you know this term.
Yeah, we discussed this in class, yeah.
Yeah, so this is, this is a good example, I think, of the intersection of social justice and environmental sustainability and food. World hunger issues are another good example of that.
And so to grow stuff without pesticides, or to, kind of adapt yourself so that you're not expecting absolutely perfect color gains and will do, any means necessary to get it, then it is intentional, definitely, and it changes how people look at it. I mean, for one thing, if you're actually got your hands in the dirt yourself as opposed to a migrant worker, I mean, are you going to, are you going to, when people say, oh, no, pesticides are perfectly safe, I mean, maybe look at it differently if you're the one who's doing the work out there.
Effects on the Geneseo community? You mean on campus?
Yeah.
On campus? Well, I don't think I've ever really stepped back and aggregated them all, but I think a greater awareness, certainly, of the people who come across it. Ken and I aren't always great at the publicity end of things, so we're working on that, but we have a lot of balls in the air, let's just say. But of the students who come and take part in it, they get an awareness, I think. Some of them come with a lot of experience gardening, some of them come with zero. They just heard about it, it sounds cool, I'm going to do it, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we're very open to that, to welcoming in anybody at any skill or knowledge level to work in the garden and to participate in the other pieces of the food project. But I think between the garden itself and the CSM, there's a lot of awareness, a lot of increased awareness, I guess, of food issues, because even people who come with a fair amount of experience don't always connect all the dots, with all the political issues and so forth, and we talk about that. So when we have a garden shift, for example, and Ken or I, or both of us are out in the garden working with students, we talk while we work, and it's not like a lecture format or anything like that, but, things come up and we talk about it, and, both in terms of what we're doing specifically on the ground in the garden and how that relates to other issues. The CSM, the students have communicated a great deal. They talk a lot about how they cook. For example, they get a box of produce, some of which they're not too familiar with the items in it, and they swap recipes and talk about how to do it. So there's like this kind of autodidactism that has emerged, a kind of a culture of food, that we really didn't think would necessarily. I mean, we weren't anticipating that, but it just happened, and we really like that. So I guess it's that kind of awareness. that we're mainly going for.
Because you talked about closing the loop and keeping the produce local. What happens to the produce that you guys garden and farm? And I mean, now you answered it might go to Eco House, but where else? What else do you do with it?
Most of it doesn't go to Eco House. So some things do. We've had some meals, there, and we had a pesto making party, kind of, taking our basil crop and doing that, and our garlic as well. But most of the produce is divided up among the students who come to the garden and do a work.
So where does the food go, and where would you want the food to go if you could?
Well, right now the food goes to
whoever shows up.
Yeah, people show up. They usually you'll plant some stuff, you'll do some weeding, and then at the end you just kind of whatever's ripe, we'll just kind of lay out in a pile, and people just take stuff home. Well, one of the things that we came up against the first summer is that the food pantry that's in Geneseo is set up as does not take fresh food. And hopefully, I mean, a lot of this, it's kind of bizarre that you're trying to find places for food to go and to say that it's free.
Yeah, you'd think it should be gobbled right up, and instead it's said, nah, we can't take that. To start off our reflexive statements, I will be discussing method. Basically, we wanted to get as much natural dialogue and footage as possible, and let the speakers talk about what they wanted to tell us about. We asked Dr. Kleiman some questions, but mostly we let him discuss what he thought we should know. This simple observation method of filming was used at a greater extent in the garden. For the hour or so that we were there, I just left the camera on and let the people talk about what they wanted to talk about. We would ask them some questions and give them prompts when they were moving off course. And I think that worked really well. So our plan basically was to take the footage and then analyze it together and edit it, and then do what we're doing right now, which are reflexive statements.
I thought it was strange that there was such a disconnect between what the professors and the people in charge of the Geneseo Community Garden and the Geneseo Food Project were striving for, with all of the social ramifications and locavore, organic mentalities, and what the students were getting out of it. It seemed like, for the most part, it was a release from classes. It was a means to get outside and acquire fresh produce, which, I mean, I can absolutely see the instant gratification aspect of it, but I guess I expected more societal awareness, since Aaron was really the only one of the people we interviewed who seemed to be aware of the greater societal impacts and willing to talk to us about it. I was also a little bit disappointed to learn that the Geneseo Food Project, I mean, with all of the speaking of the speaker series and the Team Talk class, didn't actually have any of those.
Alright, so going into this project, I had no idea that the garden was more than just the actual community garden. But after talking to the students and the faculty, I was surprised that there was more to it, which was the food project in general. And I was really surprised at some of the students' take on the difference between like the garden and the food project, especially when Dr. Kleiman was telling us about some of the first students that started the garden and that they actually went on to sustainable development jobs. That really surprised me, because I know, at least when I'm involved in most groups, it's as a group thing and I don't usually apply it to my later life. And one of the kids I was talking to in the garden, Aaron, actually was planning on going into sustainable development as a job. So it really impressed me.
I sense a runner in the garden, although my judgment's known to fade.